Hello you, welcome to Geekism and welcome back to Prehistoric Kingdom, where we're actually building a proper enclosure today. We put down the Microraptors in the last episode, but now I've kind of got to grips a little bit with the sort of build controls and what have you. It's time to really dive in and start to build some cool stuff. Thanks for all the feedback on the first episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. I'm having a blast with this one, to be honest. It's really nice to have some creative juice flowing again. We're going to be covering this game a lot here on the channel, so if you are not already, make sure you've subscribed so you don't miss any Prehistoric Kingdom stuff here on Geekism. Today we're doing the big one. We're doing a T-Rex habitat, because they're my favorite dinosaur. People who are into dinosaurs have got really awesome random ornate favorites, but I'm not really into dinosaurs, so I like the big one that shouts on the movies. I've always thought T-Rexes are really cool. Talking of people who are into dinosaurs, I will say that I don't really have much dinosaur knowledge. I apologize. I mean, I try and read up about the games I'm playing, but for instance, with Planet Zoo, for instance, I really read up on sort of zoo welfare and how animals are kept in zoos for Roller Coaster Tycoon and games like that. I really sort of read up into how theme parks are put together. There's very little literature on how a Jurassic Park should work, because it doesn't exist. But even still, I might have a look into some of the sort of concepts of what we think dinosaurs did, because I think that might be quite cool to try and feed some of that into these habitats. But this one, to be honest with you, I just kind of made stuff that I thought looked good. And one thing I really thought about was that these, even though the game has sort of fences drawn in, big metal fences, I would be very surprised if somebody just put a T-Rex behind a fence and had a path on the other side of it and said, look at that T-Rex, because I feel like that's just an accident waiting to happen. So even though pit exhibits, which is what we're basically building here, aren't very common in real zoos these days, I feel like it would be quite a sensible thing to do if you're housing a couple of Tyrannosaurus Rexes. So that's kind of what the feel I've gone for here is a slightly more sort of old school, really, pit idea. Like I said, you wouldn't really see in modern zoos so much anymore because it can sort of stress the animals out a little bit. But I don't know, T-Rexes always seem pretty stressed. So, and I was going to say they're not real. Obviously they are. I'm not just a dinosaur denier. But, we don't have them now. So this isn't really a sort of conscious worry that we have to think about. Anyway, I'm really digressing. What are we building here? So we're building a sort of pagoda that looks out over all aspects of the exhibit. The main reason I wanted to do this was because I wanted to start to have a little figure out of how these guests work, because I've watched a few videos from people now, and it seems pretty wacky that the guests don't actually need paths to walk around. It seems like you need path down for them to generate in the first place, but eventually they will just walk off path if it means they can get a better look at a habitat. I can't really tell what the actual sort of mechanics are about it, but it looks like, they will walk off, and to the point where if you're not careful, if you've built sort of like rocks or something, they'll start climbing up the rocks to see stuff, which is pretty wacky. So it does mean that the issue we had in the last episode, where the pathing doesn't like to get too close to the look at the fact I can scale the whole thing here, isn't that great? Isn't that insane? The pathing doesn't like to get too close to the water or what have you. That doesn't really matter so much anymore, because you can just build a fake path out of some of this concrete floor or concrete wall, for instance. Shrinking this whole thing did mess it up a little bit. Some of the pieces scaled slightly differently to others, so this has ended up being a little bit sort of wonky, but it's fine. It's good enough. It looks like it's what it's meant to look like, I think. So I kind of neaten it up with a little bit of trimming here along the top, but otherwise, look at that, you can see guests walking around there. It's at that point I noticed that these here were way too high, so we dropped them down so the guests can actually see stuff. Annoyingly, at some point during me building this habitat, the guests all just disappeared. I don't know why, but there's no guests in the park anymore. The door's still there and what have you, but alpha's going to alpha. It isn't something that particularly bothers me too much, because the guests at the moment literally just walk around. It'd be nice for them to be there for screenshots and glamour shots at the end of videos, but honestly it doesn't really fuss me too much that they're not around. T-Rex lookout, I decided to call this space. This is actually just one area. We there's another area that you can look out at the T-Rex, just some more sort of traditional stand here and look at the animals. one thing I realized from the limited research I did for things like Planet Zoo is that habitats, zoos want to get the most out of habitats they can, so very rarely will a habitat just have one viewing point. It very often has 2 or 3 from different areas utilizing different methods. So for instance, here we've got this sort of large open with the pagoda looking down, and then later on it's a sort of lower down level with a glass fence in front of it, and you can also do things like having areas that are inside caves to see the sleeping arrangements. You can have areas that really sort of poke into the habitat and feel like you're really sort of in there as part of them with them. So there's lots of things you can do, and probably with some of the more the less nasty carnivorific animals, we might look at doing some things like that if we can figure out how to make it work in the confinements of the game. But yeah, T-Rex, I thought, people aren't going to want to get too close to a T-Rex. I'm sorry, there might be some crazy people who do, but for the most part people aren't going to want to get too close to a T-Rex. So we've kept it sort of more of a sort of admire from a distance rather than sort of getting up close and personal. Playing around with some of the foliage here. Really great selection so far. Like I say, it's a little bit limited, but it is alpha. We're expecting a lot more, I think, which is good. But so far, you can really sort of, all these little cracks that the rocks take here, and you'll notice that I'll try and find a few themes that I can run through the park with. So that sort of rock work with foliage sort of seeping out of the cracks is something that you'll probably see crop up around the place, as a bit of a sort of running theme throughout the park. And then I'll be honest with you, most of this now is rock work. We do a lot of rock work, and like I said, I did have to worry a little bit because these rocks here, the guests could walk on it, and obviously if this was a real zoo or a real park, then this probably wouldn't really suffice. You'd have to have a proper barrier up here, but the extension of disbelief can kind of do a little bit of work for us here because it's dinosaurs. And also, I think one of the problems I had with other games that I've played like this, most notably Planet Zoo, is that I get a little bit too bogged down in the details of that sort of stuff. So at least for now with the alpha, I'm just gonna have fun with it really and make stuff that I think looks cool, and I'm going to try and steep myself in realism as much as I can. I'm not going to be doing any sort of floating islands or, buildings that wouldn't physically be able to hold up under gravity, that kind of thing. I always try to aim towards a realistic build, but I'm not going to really try and bog myself down in the pure sort of day-to-day running of how this thing would actually work and, whether guests could sue or not. But yeah, it'd be nice to kind of get a middle divide there where you can still be a little sort of loose with what you do, but still got to consider in those sort of realistic practices. Here, I wanted a waterfall, and I went to put a waterfall in, and then went, oh, we don't have any waterfalls. Again, the problem is with this game is the mechanics of it are so similar to Planet Zoo. I just assumed that I've got all my Planet Zoo stuff, and I haven't. So I kind of faked it with some concrete. Again, you can't even recolor stuff at the minute, so it wasn't like I could make anything blue. Really struggle with this one. Eventually found that you can put these down and it kind of creates a bit of foam, but honestly, if we end up getting some sort of special effects during the beta and we can still put this park in, I'll come in here and replace it with an actual moving waterfall. So I did that and then put a glass one over the top of it, and it kind of, it has a bit of a sheen. At a glance, it almost looks like a bit of a waterfall, but you get what I was trying to do there. Yeah, that's the only thing I will say about this is that although everything's kind of working pretty well, there isn't the biggest piece count, and with scaling and stuff, it wouldn't matter so much. The thing I'm really missing here is the recoloring of objects. That'd be awesome. I know we're getting it. I think the sort of the UI is already in place for it to sort of be able to type in a hex code or whatever. That would really blow it up. So then you basically can change any piece into any size or any color. I think you're really opening the game up there. But at the moment, you're kind of limited to the greys and wood colors of the modern set, which is the single set that we've got in the game so far. So I'm not complaining. It's an alpha. We're getting used to everything, but I think if anything, I'm just excited to be able to use these tools, these sort of scaling tools, and everything else with more sort of Lego bricks, basically. I always think of these games as basically digital Lego. Those are the sort of games that I'm attracted to, and obviously Lego's fine, but if all you had was 3x2 yellow pieces, you're eventually going to start getting a little bit faded by them. So the good thing about Lego is having both the creativity to make stuff with it, but also lots of different pieces of Lego so that we can do stuff. So that was an incredibly laboured analogy, but I hope it kind of made a little bit of sense. Who were making our second sort of view, lookout view, then I felt like anywhere that the sort of path goes right into the habitat, it should be a sheer face, just to sort of help against any creatures climbing up, or to an extent any people climbing down, I suppose. So I made sure that was a sheer face there, but wanted to change it up a little bit from the other one, just as a bit of variation. And I also feel like that sort of concrete structure or brick structure would add some more support under a path rather than it being sheer rock work as well. Again, I'm not really trying to sort of bog myself down into the logistics of it, just variation really helps with these kind of things. So if you're playing this game or any other game for that matter, I get a lot of comments asking, where'd you get your inspiration from and how'd you get so good and all that. I don't think I'm actually that good at these. I just, I put it out on YouTube and put enough out that YouTube's algorithm befriends me every now and again. But my advice always is, keep it varied. The worst thing you can do is just have a grey box or a green box. Change up the size, change up the materials you're using, and try and keep a theme going. Here I'm trying to use more sort of temperate-y, almost going for a bit of an alpine-y kind of feel, or like a tundra kind of feel is what I was going for here. I have no idea whether T-Rexes would have lived anywhere like this. I'm not a dino guy. But it just kind of felt right that a T-Rex would be pretty, could stand up in pretty harsh stuff. But I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you want to. But honestly, I don't really care that much. Like, if you want to sort of engage with me about dinosaurs, that's cool. I'll happily talk about it. But don't try and correct me, because I don't care enough. Sorry. I just think, no, I did fill it in. I was like, there's a gap there, and I was like, did I actually fill that gap in the end? I think I did with some rock work. Yeah. So the only thing I'm not so happy about with the final product here is this building that we're doing here, which is basically a shelter. And at this point, the habitat had taken me about 3 hours, 4 hours, and my little boy's home at the moment because he's got a bit of a runny nose. He's perfectly fine, but for COVID reasons he can't be at daycare. So he's at home with me. So I'm sort of splitting my time between playing and sort of occupying him as well. I can only get so long out of Paw Patrol on the iPad, and parents, I'm sure, will agree. God, do you remember when kids used to have screen time limits before COVID? My kid lives with either an iPad, a Switch, or a TV in front of him now, but never mind. We'll figure it out next year. But so I'm sort of throwing my time around a little bit between him and work and stuff. So, because I'm a full-time YouTuber, I normally have the house to myself all day while I can play these games. So for that reason, this is probably a little rushed here at the end. I wanted to try to get a bit of a feel of like a man-made structure that's kind of made to look a bit more natural but isn't very good. Again, the idea that T-Rexes are big old badasses and this thing can't be in any way, shape or form look like it's going to fall down. These have all got to be sturdy as hell structures that we put into place. But saying that, it's a bit plain. It's basically a stone box, and that's always the thing I tell people not to do when they say, how'd you make these games look so good? Is don't just build a big grey box. So I think what we're going to do is, hopefully when I'm able to live stream again, which will probably be, if you're watching this at time of release, tomorrow or Thursday, we might come back in as part of the live stream and redo that bit specifically and see if we can make that look a little fancier and a little bit more sort of in keeping with that sort of really quite detailed modern aesthetic that the in-game buildings currently have. So not much else left to do, to be honest with you. Finishing off the sort of larger space here that the dinos can wander around with. Wanted to keep it pretty sparse. Again, T-Rexes, they're not herbivores. They aren't going to go around and eat all this planting, but they're going to go around and stomp about a lot. So you look at any sort of elephant or rhinoceros habitat in a regular zoo, it's pretty much just sort of dust and barren because they just clomp about all day. And obviously, dinos are going to do the same. I will try and change this up a little bit as we go on. I like the idea of maybe doing like a swampy kind of biome for some of them, and maybe, you know, some of the smaller ones we can do more of a sort of heavily vegetated space. And here, you know, where the dinos aren't going to be moving so much, we do sort of make sure there's some ferns and stuff around the place. But yeah, I didn't want to do like too much foliage on the regular ground there, because you really want to try and get those runs, those sort of lines that you can see that very often animals in captivity sort of create, you know, because they're using the same space over and over again, whereas in real life they'd most likely sort of migrate a lot more and move around. And then finally, just using this brush tool. How cool is this, man, just for filling in background? I don't think I'd use this in a habitat or whatever, but wow, filling in those gaps in between the habitats. I ended up covering the dinosaur in rocks. I just assumed they would pop up. Here's me doing some testing. Look, I assumed they'd just pop up to the top of the rocks, but no, they didn't. I actually just like suffocated that dino, but managed to get him out. There's a boy and a girl in there, and they seem pretty happy. So there you go. So yeah, the only real downside at the moment is there's no guests in the little pictures there. You know, that'd be nice to see, wouldn't it? But never mind. I think the habitats turned out really good. Love some feedback. Let me know what dino you want me to do next. I'm happy to tackle anything. Thank you so much for watching. Again, please drop a like on the video. It really does help. And if you're not already, don't forget to subscribe. Until the next one, be good.